Everybody, and welcome to another fantastic session that we've got for you here at the Product-Led Festival. I'm really looking forward to this one, so I'm going to keep the introduction really short. Just to remind you, as with all the sessions, you can drop your questions into the chat box as you think of them. Don't wait until the end. Drop them in as you think of them, and we've got some minutes at the end to go through all of those. And I'm sure you'll have lots of questions for this session, because it's going to be a really interesting one. Just a reminder, if you haven't already, check out productledalliance.com. Lots of resources on there. You can get into the free Slack community, so be sure to check that out. Now, without any further ado, I'm going to invite our speakers to join me on the stage, to join me on video. And as they do, I will give them a brief introduction. So we're very lucky to have not one, but two Chief Product Officers in this session. So we have Laura Marino, who is the CPO at TrueML, and we have Tiama Hansen-Drury, who is the CPO at Mina Technologies, and also is the host of the For the Love of Product podcast as well. So they are joining us today, and they're going to have a conversation around a really interesting topic. How do you build fintech partnership momentum in regulated markets? It's a very difficult challenge to do, and I'm sure they'll have a lot to share with us on it. But I will get out of the way and hand straight over to you both, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself a little bit further.
Thanks, James. Appreciate the introduction. And on behalf of Laura, we are so happy to be with you. If you are here, feel free to put in the chat who you are, where you're dialing in from, and hopefully you're going to connect and make some connections, because I think Laura and I were talking about this in the prep. Anyone who's dialing into this session probably is looking to learn from each other as well as us as speakers. So it's a great chance to maybe meet a niche audience that works in a difficult but rewarding space. With that, Laura, can you tell us a little bit about who you are? And well, maybe I'll take a step back, how we met, right? We met on the podcast, For the Love of Product. And you came on and you told your story. And if anyone hasn't listened to that episode, not to plug it, but I do recommend it. Laura's got a really inspiring journey, and she shared some really good wisdom. But she also talked a little bit about what she's doing today. And we just really hit it off, because we deal with a lot of similar challenges in our space and in our day jobs. And so we decided to team up for this presentation today, which will hopefully be useful for everyone. So Laura, tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing at TrueML, so that people understand.
Yes. So, well, we met thanks to PLA, and it's been wonderful, but we've yet to meet in person. So hopefully the next time we do this, it will be on an actual stage in person. But a bit about me, I have been leading product teams in large and small organizations across a number of industries for over 20 years. I am a lecturer at Stanford University and at my alma mater in Colombia, where I teach product management. I'm also a board member at Leading Women in Technology, which is a nonprofit dedicated to promoting women in leadership. And I'm currently the Chief Product Officer at TrueML, which is the parent company of TrueAccord. And we are a B2B2C fintech company dedicated to transforming what I would call the least sexy area of financial services, which is debt collection. There are over 60 million people in the US with debt in collections. And what we're doing is transforming what used to be this traditional call and collect industry, where you had large call centers with people calling consumers to get them to pay, to something that's a consumer-friendly, personalized, digital-first service, where consumers are empowered to have the options that best work for them to get current with their debts. And what we have learned is that by focusing on what's best for the consumer, we can also deliver best results for our clients, who are the banks, the large credit card companies, and other creditors who are relying on us for collecting on that debt that's owed to them. And of course, this is a highly regulated industry, and we will talk more about that. But enough about me. Tiama, you have an amazing background, and you're doing a lot of interesting things. So tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, I had to get my mic off. Well, first of all, I'm really excited to dive into that problem space that you just mentioned because it's clearly so important and impacts so many people's lives. And yet, I'm sure it's frustrating feeling sometimes limited by all the compliance and regulation. But before we do that, my current day job is I'm the chief product officer at a company called Mina Technologies, and we focus on similar client sets to what Laura's company does. We're working with banks, we're working with credit card companies, we're working with merchants, but we focus on a different part of the FinTech ecosystem, which is around recurring payments and subscription management in particular. And like TrueML and TrueAccord, there is a B2B2C component to our business. So while our technology sits within a bank, it is there to benefit a consumer and allow them to have self-service subscription management from within their banking environment so that they don't have to go outside of the banking environment to cancel a subscription, to pause a subscription, to change to a more affordable plan, to resume it once they've put it on hold. And that product not only benefits, of course, the cardholder, the consumer, but it also benefits the bank because the bank doesn't have to deal with calls and complaints from Laura when her subscription wasn't paused when she wanted it to. And it benefits the merchants, the subscription merchants, because every cancellation that is prevented via a pause or a change plan means someone that isn't churning from their business. So we spend a lot of time talking to banks and to merchants, but also making sure that we stay compliant, and we work with the teams within those companies to support them through making decisions that can be risky because they're dealing with people's money. And that's what we'll talk a little bit about today. And on the side, I also do the podcast and spend quite a bit of time dedicated to volunteering with women in product and different roles. So I'm really happy to be here today and dive into this conversation.
Yeah. Well, Tiama, so you mentioned Mina has as clients some of these very large banks and other organizations that are very risk averse. So how do you go about innovating the product? How do you go about working with those clients to be able to bring innovation to the market?
Well, so this is one of those things, Laura, you and I we bonded over when we were first talking. It's really easy when you're in a B2B position to sometimes lose the impact that you're having on the end consumer, right? Or the end user of something. And so one of the things that we really try to do when working with our banks in particular, who are very risk averse because there's so much to lose, right? Like we really have to talk with them about, everything has to be framed around what we're doing and how it is higher reward than it is risk, right? And one of the ways we do that is we really focus in on the impact that they're going to be able to drive to their consumers. They are, banks are in an environment where, just like many other sectors, there's been rapid digitalization that took place during the pandemic. And so they are in, having a need to keep up with digital services and value-added solutions that they can offer to their consumers. That's why open banking and fintech partnerships have become so exciting, because they can offer these services without having to build them themselves. And so one of the things that Mina has found is exceptionally important to innovating with them, is always starting from a place of acknowledging their risk, acknowledging the constraints of those decisions, showing them each step of the way that we are thinking about de-risking for them, but always focusing on the value of the consumer that we're providing a solution for, right? So instead of talking about adding in a new feature, we're talking about the customer data that they have on their customer needs and why adding this feature is going to allow them to offer something very important to their customers. And right now, a great example of that would be the cost of living crisis, right? It's a lot easier to talk with a bank about how they're going to be able to offer control to a consumer to pause unwanted spend at a time where cost of living is quite expensive than it is to talk about just adding cancellation as a feature within the application. So I think, at a very high level, and we can certainly go into it deeper, it's really about always having those two sides. always letting them know that we're thinking ahead of it for them in terms of de-risking each step and trying to arm them with the data so that they feel confident in that, but also orienting it in their consumer demand and their consumer desirability so that they know that that value is something that they really care about, right? Even if they're making some risky choices by adding new features or working with a new third-party provider.
It sounds like you work a lot directly with those customers and you interact a lot with them to discuss some of that, which I think is great because they probably are going to appreciate how you're bringing that input to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we've found, honestly, we've really built up our design and research team to be quite robust and to actually sit on site with our customers and go through whiteboarding sessions together, do the user journey together, do even research. We offer to do research for them sometimes to collect information. If it arms them, we very much try to be a value-added partner to them and a strategic advisor to them, leveraging what we know, but also almost being an extension of their teams because it, one, helps us build that partnership with them, but two, helps them understand really the impact of anything that they're going to be doing on their consumer.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, Laura, you and I, one of the things that we talked about is on your end is, okay, there's lots of different challenges to working in financial services or in any place that is, highly regulated. And while I was hitting quite on design and research has been a huge superpower for us in terms of how we partner with our customers. You really work with, a different set. I mean, you work with them too, but you had another example of something that's been quite integral to your guys' approach to innovating with risk-averse clients. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes. So as I mentioned earlier on, we have proven that by us doing the best for the consumers, we can produce the best results for our clients as well. And our clients trust us in terms of being the experts in creating the right experiences for the consumers. But as I mentioned too, we are in a highly regulated industry. If you are in financial services, you are regulated. If you are in financial services in debt collection, that's even more regulated. And our clients are very concerned about compliance. So what we need to be able to do on the product side is we need to work very closely with our compliance and legal teams to make sure that everything we build, everything we design has compliance built in from the very beginning. Compliance cannot be an afterthought. And so I can give you a couple of examples. We have a very strong legal and compliance team, and that's very helpful because the regulation is complex and there's different regulations that impact our industry. And even different states have different regulations. So some of the things, for example, that we need to be able to do in our product, when we have debts that are placed with us, the first thing we need to do is start to reach out to those consumers. And we're reaching out to millions of consumers using digital channels, primarily email, text messaging. But when we can reach out to them, the time that we can reach out to them and the disclosures and information is very regulated, and different states need different disclosures. So the product itself has to be designed to be checking that before anything goes out to a consumer, is it going out in the right time? Is it going out with the right disclosures that are needed for that specific state where the consumer is located? So that has all been built into the product. And that's what gives our clients the confidence that while we're doing this in a large scale, each individual communication is compliant. But regulations don't stay still, they change. So on an ongoing basis, we are working with our legal and compliance team to make sure that anything that's new gets updated in the system. And sometimes there are big efforts. We had some major, the Financial Protection Bureau in the US is one of the most important regulatory bodies for our industry. And a year ago, they made a lot of changes in terms of what to communicate to people in debt. So we made a big update to the product. But it's not only those big changes, even small things. One of the things we do to personalize the experience for each consumer is that we have a machine learning AI engine that's deciding for each consumer what tone of voice, what message to select. And we have a big library of content, and the machine learning picks for this person based on their behavior. A milder, more empathetic tone is going to work better. For some other person, it may be a more assertive tone. And every time that our team is working on creating new content, that has to be reviewed by our legal team. So we have put in place a process that allows us to still be agile as we experiment and do things, but everything goes through a quick review of our legal team before we go out with that. And so those are just some of the examples.
Laura, I think it would be really interesting for people to understand. So often when we think about cross-functional teams and building in either the key competencies into those teams or working with their stakeholders, do you frame compliance and legal as the key stakeholders, or do you think about them as members of the cross-functional teams when building products? How do you think about that relationship?
I actually think it's both. Sometimes they really are more like the stakeholders. Something new is coming, or they are looking at our internal audits and saying, I think, so they are a stakeholder saying, we would like the product to do this, or we would like the product to do this. Other times they are really team members because we know we're building something new, but we want to make sure we build it right from the very beginning. So we start reaching out to them and consulting with them. What if we want to do this? What if we want to create a new experience for the consumers? Will this be okay? Is there anything that we need to be concerned about? So it is really this interesting duality, both stakeholders, but also team members. How do you do that in your company?
Well, I think for us, so we definitely design and research as part of every cross-functional team. So that's, whatever feature we're working on, there is a design manager, and they also are trained in, all types of different research, both quantitative, qualitative, first party, secondary, et cetera. But I think what's worked really well from the customer side is having, and I try to get the teams to do this as much as possible, contact mapping, to use a kind of an older sales term. But basically, every time that we get on the phone with a new prospect and a new customer, as soon as possible in the process, we try to link up their designers and their product people with our product people and our designers so that they can start to contact map and build that relationship, but also so that they then see themselves as extensions of each other and can work on, sometimes we do design sprints with, our customers. Sometimes it's more about we come prepared with research that we've done on their behalf to our different, kind of stakeholder check-in meetings with them as we move through the integration. We try to flex kind of to whatever the working style is of the bank that we're working with or the FinTech that we're working with. But the key is really to try and show them that we're willing to do the heavy lifting and we're willing to help be there in the trenches with them from a design and research perspective each step of the way so that they understand that we're de-risking and we're making good choices for the consumer.
Great. Yeah, one of the things that I do recommend to teams that are working in this highly regulated environment is to become familiar with those regulations. You don't need to be the expert. You hopefully have a lot of experts in-house, but becoming familiar enough so that you can understand what the objective behind the regulation is. The reason why there's so much regulation in our industry is because that industry had been subject to a lot of abuses. People in debt are in a very vulnerable situation, and it used to be that some companies that were in the debt collection space would be really threaten people and abuse them. So that's why a lot of the regulation came in to protect those consumers. But you need to, as the person designing the product, you need to be thinking a lot about what's the experience that you want to give to those consumers. Because if you allow the compliance people, you allow the legal people to define the solution, it's probably not going to be very user-friendly. So you need to be able to understand enough so that you can then start applying that balance of, okay, within this regulation, within the framework that I need to work with, how can I really provide the best possible experience for those consumers, for those users, so that they are successful when using the product?
Absolutely. I mean, one question that I'll ask, but everyone, if you do have questions, please feel free to put them in. But one question I would ask for you, Laura, because I think that a lot of times we as leaders or people who are hiring managers in a product space working in a highly regulated environment or where there's a lot of deep regulatory or compliance requirements, they struggle with knowing whether or not they need to hire people who actually come from that background, right? So they've worked in the either on the client side, the regulatory side, the vendor side, versus we know the product skills that we're looking for today, right? And those are very transferable, right? They can be picked up and they can move from, industry vertical to industry vertical. Any tips for anyone on like things that you found in terms of whether you're hiring a certain percentage from kind of the space versus a certain percentage not? Like, do you have any method to the way or some lessons that you've had about hiring?
Yes, and I've had some experiences. So I do feel that sometimes having domain experts become product managers sounds like a great idea, may not work that well. And I had in a previous company, I was working with a legal industry who actually served the largest law firms we had. And I attempted to bring people who were domain experts who had been in law firms and turn them into product managers. And that didn't quite work. So in those cases, what I really was trying to do is have domain experts be sort of advisors to the team. In the case of FinTech, one thing that's helpful is to bring product managers that already have been in FinTech, but you still want the product sense, the understanding of product, because what you don't want is to have people be sort of too focused on the domain and lose sight of the product itself. I don't know. Tiama, are you there? I don't know if I can hear Tiama. Or maybe I'm the one who's disconnected. James, are you there? No. Yama, are you there? I can't hear you. Maybe I'm going to ask for the public. Can you hear me or can you hear? Oh, okay. I think that you guys can hear me. I can't hear Tiama, so I suspect that she may be a little bit disconnected. So let me just, yeah, Tiama seems frozen to me too. So let me just kind of continue what I was saying though, to Tiama's question was, how do you pick your team and how do you balance between this domain expertise and with the product expertise? My experience is that you really want to have people who understand product, but it's very nice if you can bring people who understand product but have been in that industry for some time, because they will have learned a lot of the complexity of dealing with the regulatory side of things, of dealing with those clients who are very demanding in terms of compliance. Hey, Tiama, you're back.
I could hear you guys the whole time. But
it is so funny because I couldn't hear you, so I was thinking maybe it is me. Maybe I'm the one, but thank you to NY who confirmed that they could hear me. So I spoke a little bit. So I was just kind of finishing to answer the question about how I have approached building the teams and kind of focusing a bit more on the product skills, but bringing some of the people who've been in the industry. How about you?
Yeah, well, first of all, well handled, like a champ. I have to say, I watched you that whole time. Very good on the go. You could be a newscaster, Laura,
Oh, yeah.
rolling with the punches. But yeah, so we've I will say since I've been at Nina, we have definitely started to hire more on the customer side. And not hiring from our customers necessarily, but just people who have spent time in the trenches with our customers. And there's enough of them, you know, that have that UX experience out there that we've been able to find them and bring them in. It just seems to short circuit so much learning. So it's certainly been useful. But then what we're also doing is we're, especially for the growth and the innovation space, we're hiring people who are coming from outside of it because they think differently. They've seen things through different perspectives. They've solved, you know, challenges in other spaces. And so I'm just trying to diversify the teams, right? That's kind of been the plan so far.
Yeah, diversifying, I think, is great. One specifically a situation that we've had at TrueML is we have people on the business side who come from very large financial services organizations. They have a lot of experience in this space, but they don't have as much understanding or experience of what product does and how product and engineering operate in a product-led company. And so there is this mutual education. You have to do it in both directions. I had to do a lot of education, and my team had to do a lot of education because people who came from the large financial services had this idea that product people are project managers, that the business is telling engineering what to do, and product people are there to project manage engineering and make sure they deliver. And the whole concept of no, product people are really figuring out how to solve the problem of the customers and the consumers and bringing this back. That was a little bit of a mind shift for some of them. So we did a lot of education, but at the same time, we were being educated the complexities of what this industry is and how clients expect things. So there has to be a lot more of that communication and back and forth education than in simpler industries. In the more traditional software B2B, you don't need to spend that much time on that, learning and educating.
Yeah, but which is a great opportunity to build that partnership, right? Because you're both contributing value. Yeah. Okay, Laura, well, I can't believe it. We're getting to the end of our time, and you and I both wanted to give our audience a takeaway tip. So I'm going to ask you if there was one thing that you could give our audience as a tip to take away if they're building in a similar environment to us, what would that be?
I would say don't let compliance be an afterthought. Keep it in mind from the very beginning, but at the same time, don't let your legal and compliance team dictate the solution. You're still the one who has to build the solution within the constraints of what compliance and regulatory require. But understand what that means, and then you build the solution that's best for your clients and for your consumers. So back to you with the same question, Tiama, what is the main takeaway that you would recommend?
I think leverage the heck out of design and research every step of the partnership journey is my advice. So similar to don't let it be an afterthought, don't let design and research just be the person that does the mock-ups or your clickable demo. Bring them early into discussing. I mean, we've added value, everything on the API design to, you know, the sign-up journey, to the communications to your users. So bring them in early so they can create a genuine partnership with your customer, whether it's a FinTech or whether it's a bank or someone else in the regulated space, and let them do their magic, because your integration will be better for it. And that means the customer experience and the ROI on that integration will be better for it as well.
Great. One final recommendation. Take advantage of the people that you're meeting through PLA. It is so wonderful to have peers that you can reach out to and compare notes and see how are you dealing with these challenges. And PLA is a great place to meet people.
Couldn't say it better. James, welcome back.
Maybe.
maybe.
We can't see James, but
well, for everyone else, thank you for joining us. I think we're going to get cut off here in 8 seconds, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the events that are taking place today.
thanks for joining. Bye.